an Undertow Content podcast.
Undertow Content acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we are recording this podcast. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people Australia-wide. From Undertow Content, you're listening to Cut, the podcast where we deep dive into the many facets of the entertainment industry, both locally and internationally.
We're bringing you unfiltered stories and raw insights with no gatekeeping.
We're your hosts, Amanda Browne
and Nell Nakkan.
On today's show, we talk to Joe Martone, a professional percussionist who's based in LA and has played music for films, TV shows, musicals, and more. But before we do that, let's kick things off with In the News.
All right, everyone, strap in for this one because for our In the News segment today, we are chatting about all things awards season. As we are recording this, we are right in the thick of it and excitement is mounting, so we thought it would be good to dive a little deeper into how it all works. The thing is, there are a lot of people both in the industry and out of it who might watch and be interested in who has won, but don't really understand how it all works. And we know it is all very subjective. Like, how do you compare La La Land and Moonlight? Yes, I know it had its own controversy. And it's always been a bit of a myth. Many people ask the question, yes, but how did they get nominated?
100%. I hear it all the time. Well, thanks to an article published in Vanity Fair a couple of years ago. I know, a little while ago. However, it has the best explanation that we found and is still super relevant. It was written by Johanna Desta, titled Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Awards Season, but Were Afraid to Ask. We are here to hopefully help us all find some clarity around this time in the screen industry calendar. Johanna breaks it down very well, starting off with time frame, saying that the truth is that for the movie industry, awards season never really ends. When one Oscar ceremony concludes, insiders immediately begin plotting for the next cycle, and so on and so forth. It's like an election, except they prepare to run for president every year instead of every 4 years. No thanks.
Yes, this is very true. It's a yearly process and starts pretty much as soon as the last cycle ends, or actually even before. So if we talk specifically about film, some studios would be planning a film's awards season journey before it even comes out. I'm sure there would be some cases where a studio would identify a film that came in from a director or producer who was of a certain caliber, and it would immediately go into the quote-unquote awards basket and have the support and funding behind it. Someone like Christopher Nolan or Steven Spielberg would carry that sort of weight.
Desta goes on to say that the more targeted answer is that awards season generally kicks off in September and ends, of course, with the Oscars, the Academy Awards, presented by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, more commonly known as the Academy. The Oscars are usually held in late February or early March. And just to note, you may or may not know that I have previously worked for the Academy, and a caveat to this segment, the opinions and information in this segment is not the opinion of the Academy. It is my own opinion. It is Nell's own opinion. It's also publicly available, a lot of this information. So we are in no way speaking on behalf of the Academy. We're not breaching contracts. We signed some paperwork and we are not breaching that paperwork.
Yes.
Just wanted to put that little legal tidbit in there.
We don't want Amanda getting sued. So the kickoff in September is the Emmys. That's our first one, and that is more focused on television. Given now that most actors do both film and TV, you get a good showing of talent. In terms of films, though, really, if you're engaging in awards season, you are aiming for the Oscars, the creme de la creme. And Desta explains that the reason it unofficially starts in September is to make sure everyone in the Academy remembers your movie during the Oscar voting window, of course. Feature-length films are eligible for Oscars if they screen theatrically between January 1 and December 31 of a given year. So the Oscars held in 2025 actually honour the best films of 2024. Nomination round voting lasts for 1 week in January.
Desta goes on to say, given that, studios usually release their best movies in the fall, which in Australia is the spring, in order to ensure that voters won't forget about them before voting begins. Many opt for a prime Thanksgiving, so end of November, or December 25 slot, which allows a movie to get holiday spending bucks and be the freshest film on an Academy's members' mind right before they vote. This timing explains why good movie options are so hard to find at the start of the year, and why movies like Get Out, which was released in February 2017, an entire year before the Oscars for which it was eligible, are anomalies. It's typically impossible for a film to maintain hype for an entire calendar year.
This is true. It's bloody hard. However, Barbie and Oppenheimer came out in July 2023 and were both nominated for the Oscars in different categories. This definitely had a lot to do with the marketing campaigns of both and the whole Barbenheimer promotional strategy. It was always going to be a big campaign, and I wonder if both would have carried if it wasn't as big as it was. Back to Desta's article, to get even more specific, award season really, truly begins with the Toronto International Film Festival, which takes place in early September. That competition, with its convenient date and easy access for North American media and industry types, has become known as an event that separates awards wheat from the chaff.
Now, some might say that awards season actually begins with the Cannes Film Festival, which is held in May every year in Cannes, France. For those who aren't familiar with Cannes, it's one of, if not the biggest film festival in the world, and definitely the biggest in Europe. There is a prize called the Palme d'Or, which, according to their website, has been awarded to the best film in the official competition for over 60 years. This year, Sean Baker won for a film called Honora. Now, this is not a big blockbuster film. This is a smaller film with lesser-known cast that really has a cult-like following, I think, because of Sean Baker's previous work. He's not an unknown filmmaker and has had success before, so he is known within the industry, but he's not a Steven Spielberg. He's not a household name, and they are also very different types of filmmakers.
However, Honora is doing the rounds, and a lot of the time the industry will watch who wins the Palme d'Or, as that is a good first indication of who might be nominated come awards time in the US. That takes us into the next part of the article, which is the festivals. Now, we are going to do another episode that talks all about the festivals and how it all works, but for award season, the article states that these film competitions are where the biggest projects typically make their debut and vie for early attention. Here are some key festivals to know: Sundance, Berlin International Film Festival, Cannes, as we just talked about, Venice, Toronto or TIFF, and Telluride.
So Sundance in January is the first major competition, followed by Berlinale, held in Berlin in February, and the Golden Bear Award is the big film award there. Next is Cannes, which is held in May. The red carpet is iconic, and in the past it was well known for banning selfies on the red carpet. I believe this is still the case, but I know there were some celebs and influencers who either broke the rules or must have had agreements in place or something like that. We continue on with Venice in August, September. Toronto or TIFF is in September, and Telluride is in August, September as well. There are smatterings of other festivals in there, big and small, but these are some of the big ones that any team backing a film for awards season would look to have a premiere at, and also buyers are looking at these festivals for films worth investing in.
Next, Desta dives into the campaigns. We touched on this briefly before, but in the article she writes, if this world were pure, Oscar wins would always be strictly merit-based, but because there are just too many movies fighting for headspace and too much money riding on the movies and stars that land top honours, and of course, because films are not an objective art, winning a statuette means fighting all the way to Oscar night. If you are an actor and your performance has awards potential, you spend awards season doing the following: frequently flying between New York and LA to attend private screenings and do Q&As for Academy members, showing up at every luncheon and awards ceremony and gala of note, sometimes multiple ones a day, which requires a pricey and savvy stylist, and sitting for near daily interviews with reporters for radio, online, video, and magazine pieces, hopefully even nabbing a cover or two.
There are also for your consideration posters that the studios will put out on billboards and online. If you go to LA after July, you'll start to see them in time for the Emmys. Traditionally, there have been DVD screeners sent to members of different organisations who vote on the awards, like SAG and Academy members. But I'm sure that would have changed considering most people don't watch DVDs anymore.
Yeah, what's a DVD?
I know. So I'm guessing there is a password.
It's like a link now.
Basically, the marketing budgets on these films are usually, not always, large, and Desta quotes that studios can spend up to $10 million vigorously promoting a potential award winner.
Wow.
I think Barbie their marketing budget was like $150 million or something, $100 million.
Wasn't it like the size of their budget?
It was huge.
It was huge. The key players in award season are obviously the people vying for nominations, but the publicists are the ones who are working overtime behind the scenes. Amanda and I know this very much.
Yes, we do.
Beyond publicists, there are also award season strategists that can be hired by studios to help steer a project towards award wins. Now, with regards to the Oscars specifically, the Academy has in recent years enforced regulations to curtail some of the wilder campaign tactics, but as Desta states, forcing hopefuls to jump through a few extra hoops won't stop the beast that is campaigning.
It's so true. The last part of the process is the actual awards show, and as we mentioned, the Emmys kicks off awards season but is focused on TV. There are a bunch of awards ceremonies in there, but the bigger ones to note are the Golden Globes, which kicks off the film side of awards season, Film Independent Spirit Awards, the Razzies, NAACP Image Awards, all of the Guild Awards like the SAG Awards, Directors Guild of America, Producers Guild, Cinematographers, Costume Designers, etc., etc. The list goes on. Then you have the awards that are the critics' picks, like the Critics' Choice Awards. You also have international ceremonies like the BAFTA Awards in the UK. We've also just had the Actor Awards in Australia, and throw in the Grammys too. The music industry's in there too. This all leads us to the Oscars. Now, this topic is one in itself, and we are going to dive into the Oscars in another episode. But for now, this should give you a pretty good overall understanding of how this process works. We've both worked in this field, and needless to say, it is such a whirlwind when it comes to these events, but my gosh, it's so worth it. Once in a lifetime experience, and it's great because it opens your eyes to so much of how these events happen and the behind the scenes part of this industry.
Now, you've signed an NDA, but I haven't, so maybe we can spill the goss on like my one time of working the Oscars red carpet. It was quite a time.
I will close my mouth now, but feel free.
For today's expert conversation, we're really excited to introduce Joe Martone. Joe is a professional percussionist and educator based in Los Angeles. Joe is the quintessential creative entrepreneur. He continues to diversify his skills so that he is continually working as a musician in all different facets of this industry. He has been featured on various recordings, playing on projects for Netflix and Amazon and many others. He's also played on albums including Danny Elfman's Big Mess. Aside from his recording work, Joe works for many live theatre and on-camera productions. He has experience playing over 30 different musicals, ballets, and operas. He's been seen on camera for such shows as The Voice, American Idol, HBO's Perry Mason, and Disney's The Mandalorian. Through his diverse career, he has been able to work in so many different areas of this wonderful industry, and he always continues to share those experiences with his students.
Can you tell us a bit about your section of the industry?
I'm a freelance percussionist and drummer. That entails, playing live, but doing a lot of recording for video games and TV shows and movies and whatever else, live shows, things like that.
What is it about your section of the industry, the music section of the industry? How does it function in the grand scheme of, big movies and the bigger industry, I guess? Do you have a guild, like all of that sort of stuff? Is there a community there?
Yeah, so we have out in Los Angeles, we have the Musicians Union. The AFM is all over the country. We have Local 47. That's like our chapter of the union. They handle all the movies, all the everything, all that stuff. So that's who kind of runs the show if you're doing the big stuff, right?
And where do you guys fit in? Like, are you in touch with a lot of other people who work on the projects, or is it more so you're just in touch with other musicians in the music department of a project?
Pretty much just that. There have been times where, like, I've done a recording session from home where the composer came and he brought the directors. They wanted to be there just to see it all. And so it just kind of depends. Even if you go to a studio, sometimes you do meet people that are working on the film or whatever it may be, because it's literally the last step of the whole process. We are post production, which has its ups and downs, which anyone would tell, but financially, a lot of downs.
Yeah.
The fact that it's exciting and exhilarating to do things quickly, that can be fun.
Where did you start and what drew you to this particular part of the industry?
Where did I start playing, or where did I start working on the things I'm working on?
No, the very beginning. We want to hear from the beginning.
Okay, well, I got my first drum set when I was 1. I have the drumsticks somewhere. My daughter uses them. And I liked playing on the drum and playing on the cymbals and doing all that. My dad was a high school band director. He's now retired, but I was always around music. They tried to get me to change instruments many, 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 many times, and I did not. And I was even told that I had to go and learn how to play a real instrument first. So I went and took 1 year of piano before I played percussion and drums and all that, because that's a real instrument, not pots and pans. Yeah, so I did that. And then I just did music all through elementary school, middle school, high school. Decided I wanted to do it in college. In high school, I met someone who did what I wanted to do. And I always tell people it's like meeting an astronaut. And then you're like, oh, now I actually think I could be an astronaut. It seems like this far out thing. And so I did that. And then from that point, I basically just asked everyone that did what I wanted to do, what do I have to do? They told me and I did it. It's pretty much just that. And so it's just been a ride and learning and practicing and getting better and better, and obviously still learning, getting better and quicker and more knowledge going in the brain.
Yeah, awesome. And at what point did you move to LA, or are you born and raised there?
Pretty much raised here. A little stint in Pennsylvania, but I've been here since I was 10. So that was definitely a benefit. My parents moved us out here for basically like giving a better life for the kids and all that. So we've been here since we were 10, or since I was 10. I went to school here. Now I live here. So
do you think that helped come into the film industry because obviously you were around it so much?
oh yeah. Yeah. If you want to do Broadway, go to New York. If you want to do this, go right. It's been easier. Like rock and roll is Nashville or whatever it is. It's since having even started college, it's grown to where you can pretty much do it wherever you want, especially through the pandemic when everyone was recording from home. It really proved that you don't need to be anywhere. You can just be at home and send tracks to whoever, around the world. Definitely meeting the right people and meeting, for me, composers and contractors and all that. Right place to be.
At what point in the production process does someone engage you and your services? You mentioned right at the end, but then do you have any creative input on the final product?
Yeah, I'm called at the very end, because if a composer who is going to hire me, right, they're getting all their ducks in a row. Once they've written everything, then they're contacting me and I'm recording. Sometimes with, hey, can you get this done within 24 hours or by the end of the day? Recently, there was a project where I was on the phone with the guy between 7 and 8 a.m. and I had a full day of work. So I had to line it. And so I fit it in and I started recording at 8 p.m. And so by the end of the night, I sent everything off and my part of it was done.
Wow.
Sometimes you never hear what you get to do. I always try and reach out and just say like, hey, when you have the finished product, I'd love to hear it, just because it's good for me to learn and hear what they're doing. Creative input, that depends on, as a percussionist, sometimes we're creating more sound effect type stuff. And so if they're like, hey, we need a scary sound that goes like wagga wagga wagga, okay, great. So now I have to go like behind me and figure out, okay, like what makes that sound, or do I need to go to Home Depot and some hardware store and just like go get something that makes that weird sound or whatever it may be. So that can be fun, and that's like a creative part of the process. And other times, like I did a trailer for an Amazon movie, TV show, something like that. I didn't know that that's what it was going to be for, but they sent me the track. They sent me their track, and it was all based in, it sounded like Brazil, but they told me that they wanted it to be Cuba. And so I went, okay, well, which do you think, this is Cuba, or do you want, and they just said, no, just do your thing. And so in 2 hours, I just started from scratch and just made the whole thing and sent away all the stems. And then they get to mess with it and do what they want with it. I tend to over deliver, so they have more to play with in the sandbox. And then you hear the final product. But that was literally all me. I just did whatever I wanted, and then they're just choosing from that what they want to use.
Do you think that's helped you get more work, is the fact that you kind of think outside the box, or you're quite innovative in that way? Like you go to Home Depot and you get that, do you think that's helped you?
Yeah, that's helped. And I think the speed helps. The fact that you can do it so quickly, like I'll just whip out a mic and hook it up and do the recording really quick and know how to make it sound like it's not done I record from home, so make it sound like it's not done in a house. I have 2 bedrooms here that are both treated for sound. They both sound different. And then this is my living room, which is like 20-foot ceilings. And so this is the live room. You know, it depends. Do they want a lot of reverb? Do they want it to sound super dead? Do they, you know, and so everything is just good to go. I mean, I could plug everything in and get it ready in 10 minutes and record. And the longest part is just resetting for every instrument. Reset, reset, reset. But the speed helps.
And it sounds like your relationship with composers is a really key part of you getting
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't do that, then I'd have to be a composer, right? If I wanted to work on movies and I wanted to play, which is what I wanted to do as a kid, I was just like, oh, I want to play 4 movies. You know, you're watching it and it's like, oh, I did that ding or whatever it was, you know. Yeah, the only way to do that would either be to work in some type of the production of it or just be a musician that knows a composer. And then you're just trying to not only form a relationship because you want to work with the same people, you want to be their person, right? And do a good job and have that trust, but also just have a reputation of being able to do what they want. For me, I want them to call me because they want me. Anyone can hit a drum. And there are people that I know that have been doing it way longer, and the way they hit it, it's different than the way I hit it. It's different than the way, you know. And so, as you're trying to build your reputation, the music industry, like many things, I'm sure in the entertainment industry, is a ladder. Maybe I'll hit the point where I want to hit when I'm 50. When I was 18, I wanted to hit 30, and now I want to hit 40, and you know, so we'll see where I'm at.
Yeah. And so are you repped by an agent? Is that a thing for musicians?
There are some people I think that do that, or especially if you want to do the on-screen stuff, because I do that too, right? Where you'll get a call, hey, we need someone to play drum set in this film. It's set in the 1920s. Can you send us your picture? And then they're like, yeah, you're great. Come and, you know, and so then you're just in a movie pretending to play the instrument, but you're a specialist. Last time I did that, it was literally just, hey, are you this tall and do you think you could fit into this costume? Go down there. If you fit in, you're in. So I
Wow.
fit in.
And are composers the only people that would hire you? Like, who do musicians need to know to get hired?
You want to record, you need to know the composers. It used to be that you needed to know the contractors, and you still do. Like that's all the high-end stuff. They're the ones that are going to call you. Social media and everything now, it's like you're your own agent, you're your own person. So you really just have to market yourself in the way you want to market yourself and then show that you can do what you can do. And then, you know, you never know who's going to call you or what recommendation you're going to get and referral and all that. But yeah, it's literally just who you know.
So you record a lot from home, as you mentioned. You've got different setups. Has it always been that way, or is it just post-COVID? And can you talk us through your different setups as well?
For me, it's always been that way. I got told again when I was being told what to do. And like, you know, that's one of the things when I was in college. One of my mentors just said, buy a microphone, start recording. Because if this is what you want to do, you need to make sure that you can do that. And it's hard being a musician because you have to be you're looking at a grid on the screen, hoping that every sound that you make is lining up with that grid to be as perfect as it can be, right? Or not. And then you got to learn how to do that. How do you not be that? How do you, you know? Yeah, so I've always had that. It started out with just one microphone in a bedroom, then it grew to two, then it's a room on its own, and then, you know, more mics, more equipment, more stuff, and now it's whole house is mic'd up and ready to go.
And you also work outside movies. You do live theater. You've done a bunch of other things. You know, what else have you done outside of that?
Musicals, live shows, orchestras, bands, choirs, a whole slew of other, you know, it's whoever calls on the phone and whatever level too. It doesn't matter, you know, I'll go do a high school musical. I'll go do, you know, I within 1 month I was at the Amundsen, which is one of the biggest theaters in town. And then the next gig was at a high school. And so it's just like, sure, why not?
Yeah, you've got to pay the bills.
Yeah. And, you know, it's just, you know, you want to play music. So you just go and play and your buddy calls you up and he wants you to play on a Sunday service somewhere. Great, sure. And you don't, you know, you're not going to practice. You just show up and you get the music, you do it. And that, I mean, that's part of the training, I think, of being any musician, but especially the film thing. Every time you're seeing music, it's for the first time most of the time. And so you get really good at using your ears and you just show up into any situation and you do all that. But yeah, lots of musicals. I think I've either passed 40 or 50 different shows.
Wow.
And some of them more than once.
Wow.
What's the longest running gig you've had?
That was the one at the Amundsen. I was there for 8 weeks from like start to finish. And they were doing a revival of The Secret Garden here in town. 8 shows a week.
What is the hardest challenge you have had to overcome in your career?
Probably just starting, getting your name out, you know. I give this advice to all my friends, and my brother-in-law who's a trumpet player, he's like just getting his footing in town. They moved back a year ago. But I said, put together a spreadsheet and write down every gig you get and how much money you made. Like in the date, right? Just keep that because I have that now for I think we're in the 10th year that I've had that. So I can go back 10 years. I don't know why I started doing it. So I started doing that, and it's nice because it's color coded. So musicals are blue, recording is red, you know, other gigs are green, and you can just see that you're getting more work. You can see the type of work you're getting. You're hopefully making more money. Sometimes you're doing less work but making more money. So then that's good too, right? And so just doing all that, but that's the hardest thing because when you're first starting, you might be getting 5 gigs in the year and feeling like, how is this ever going to happen? And I'm sure that's how actors and everyone else that's in the industry feels. It's like, how am I supposed to do this? It's a long way up when you're at the bottom of the ladder.
I love that. And I think that hits the nail on that you've got to be in charge of your own career and really think about it like a business.
Yeah.
And also remind yourself, hey, I've done this and this and this. Like, I'm actually good. I'm qualified to do this job. So it can be like, you know, you hear of some people keeping like quotes of stuff that they did or an example of good work or whatever. And it's for you to go, actually, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. And you're very organized. Creative brains work differently. Some people are a complete mess and some people aren't. And it sounds like, you know, you being as organized as you are means you can turn things around quickly, which means that you're going to get the call more often because they know that you can do that. But you're also good at your job. So it sounds like organization is a pretty key trait to have, especially as a freelancer.
Yeah, I can keep a calendar. Keeping my place clean and all that, that's another story. But my desk down here doesn't look great, but you know, microphones, sticks, you know, it's like I'm like, but yeah, no, organization, I try and keep that all together because it's if I don't, then I get a little crazy, especially with I also teach, I do all this teaching, and so it's what school am I at? Who am I teaching today? And what gig am I at? Where do I have to drive to? What gear do I need in my car? There have been times where there's already gear at one spot, but I have a rehearsal for another gig somewhere else, and then I have to have pack for that. Then I have to write down, I have to take this symbol from this to go over here and do this recording session, bring it back. Because if you don't, then you know,
Yeah.
you go to hit something and it's not there. So that's been interesting.
So what trends are you noticing in the industry and you know, broadly that is affecting you, but also for musicians and in the music part of the industry as well?
Well, these strikes are killing us right now. Super. I mean, like, great that they're happening and great that everyone is deciding to. I mean, it would be bad if only one did a strike and then no one, you know, big revolution right now in Hollywood happening, right? Which is a great thing. But being on the post-production of things and the far side, there are still friends who are like, are you working right now? Are you, you know, because everything is super dry. And so that's tough. But hopefully we're all hopeful next year will be better. We'll see.
Survive 25.
But besides that, one of the biggest things is now that you can record anywhere, you used to have to record in LA. That was the place to do it. To the point where every major studio had their own orchestra hired. So you would just show up to work and at 8 a.m., you know, like or a 9 to 5, whatever it was, you'd show up and you would just sit there in your chair just waiting. And then they would bring you music and you'd play and then, okay, get a coffee break. Who's next? Like what movie is happening next? And it was just churning them out. And then that turned into no longer having that. And then they started hiring you know, different people and all that. And now you can go anywhere you want. So there's orchestras in Eastern Europe. There's, you know, Western, there's like Abbey Road in London. Nashville has a big recording studio that they're building right now, I think. And then Georgia's they're trying to, I mean, everywhere. I mean, same thing as production houses or studios.
Yeah, Sydney has the largest recording stage in the Southern Hemisphere at Trackdown, which is at a Disney studio, or it's at the EQ near Disney Studios.
And it's great because everyone's getting a piece of the pie, right? So if you're making a movie in Australia, you want to record it there, great, you can do that. I mean, they made Lord of the Rings in New Zealand and then they recorded it in London. And then, so there's all kinds of things like that. But that's tough because an industry that had a standard of being like LA was the place to go. And then you're like, okay, I'm in LA, I'm ready to go. And then everyone's going everywhere else. In my opinion, I don't know what anyone else would say, but it seems like the 80s were like the last heyday. There's so much happening in LA with music and recording. The 90s, it was still, and then it's just been like fizzling out since then. And so as someone who was born in 90, it's like, oh, great, I want to do this. And then, oh, well, they're not doing this like they used to, you know.
Yeah. So what is a film that has inspired or influenced you?
Well, I grew up on Star Wars. So I would say that honestly, like as a kid, and I think I was 10 when I got an album that was just all John Williams music. And that was the first moment of, oh, you can record, like people play, you can listen to just the music. You don't need the movie.
Mm.
And so I would say that that was probably that album, and probably just Star Wars by itself was the catalyst for listening to music. And I would just listen to those all the time.
And how's your journey differed so far from what you expected?
When you want to do something and you're young, all you're looking at is where you're at and where you want to be. And it's that whole drawing that people make where it's like it's not a straight line. You're going to kind of go all over the place. I've never been opposed to that. I've always just, okay, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that, whatever it is. So it's been interesting, the different directions, the different people I've met, the different places I've played in order to figure that out. But you kind of figure out that everyone that did and is doing what you wanted to do did that too. And you really get to those conversations where you hit the threshold where you're doing performances with the people you looked up to as a kid, which that's a mind-blowing, oh, you're just a person. I've like idolized you for my entire life or whatever it might be. So that's always interesting. But definitely, yeah, that the whole straight line thing, it's been interesting to experience. Everyone's gonna do it.
Joe and I met because I was working in events and we needed percussionists for the Hunger Games premiere. And so he and I had been on The Voice together, and I Googled his name and his website popped up. Or no, I Googled percussionist and your website popped up.
You got to keep your website up to date.
Right?
Yeah, well.
Another good shout.
Yes.
Do you have a best memory on set or at a live show, or like a moment where you were working where you were just like, this is a moment?
So when I was playing at the Amundsen for The Secret Garden, my parents came to see the show because I said, hey, you got to come and see it and all that. And I think that was 23, so 2002, I think we went to go see The Lion King live at the Pantages here in town. And my dad took me down to like go and see the musicians who were playing in the pit. And so I got to invite my parents to come, and I was in the pit with the little, the netting above me. And so that was sweet. And, when you're playing, you get touched in different ways. And for that show too, it was just like the first few shows that there was a live audience and there was all this confetti that was sprinkling down and all that. I'm like, this is pretty cool. So yeah, that was a big moment.
What is your superpower?
Gosh, I don't know. Organization.
Right? Color coding.
I love being able to talk to a composer in a way that has nothing to do with music. I think that's what I really enjoy doing that. I think I'm really good at it. I'll ask the question, because I don't know what I want. I want something kind of like this. And so I'll just say, okay, because you have to create kind of a palette of sounds, especially playing so many different instruments, you're creating a character that they can write on top of. And so, okay, well, do you want it to sound woody or metallic? Do you want it to sound earthy or spacey? Do you want it to sound, it's all these words that like have nothing to do with the instruments I'm going to use, but by using those, you can kind of pick the brain of the person to know like, okay, I'll stay away from this, or I'll do this, or something as simple as, what part of the world do you want this to sound like? And do you want it to sound like it's from there? Or do you want it to sound, because there are things I've done where they don't want it to sound like anything. One of them was like space drums. Well, what's a space drum? So then you're trying to figure that out, and sound effects and all this kind of stuff. So I think being able to talk to someone like that, and
that is a superpower for sure.
What are you watching and where are you watching it?
I just finished Seinfeld. Recently, House of the Dragon finished. I'm watching that. Yeah. I'm watching a lot of TV shows, a lot of Bluey, to be honest.
So on streaming, are you on streaming? Like,
I buy movies if they're not available. I'll do that in a heartbeat. But yeah, I just stream everything, and I'll go see a movie in a movie theater. The last one I saw was Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah, I pretty much just watch things at home, and I just watched two Italian films. One that I had seen and one that I hadn't, but I had heard the music for the one that I hadn't before. So it was nice to see that.
Do you find you're still a student is re-educating yourself?
Oh yeah, the best is when you get a call that says, "Hey, do you know how to play this instrument?" and you don't. And you say, "Yeah, totally." "Oh yeah, I'm a musician and I hate listening to music. I would much rather listen to a podcast or listen. I mean, I'll just drive in silence if I'm in the car. But I always ask other people what they're listening to, and I'll say, "Send it to me," or whatever it is. And even if I hate it, I'll listen to it because you're trying to absorb as much as you can. And the amount of times that has saved my ass, many, many, many times. Because,
Yeah.
do you know this person? Can you make it sound like that? Yeah, 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 totally. And then you're just like, oh, wait, no, I do kind of know what that is. Or you play something and I'll be like, where did that come from? And then days later, oh, yeah, forgot about that.
This is the question we ask everybody. What's one bit of advice that will actually help our listeners move their career forward?
You never know when you're talking to someone how they will affect your life. Ever. I read this book a long time ago that talked about weak ties and strong ties. I recommend it to everybody. It's called The Defining Decade. I'm not in my 20s anymore, but that's about being in your 20s. It goes into this whole thing about how your weak ties are going to do more for you in your life than your strong ties are. And I think that is 100% true. There are people that I've met, and then 10 years later, they'll call me just to say, oh, hey, are you still doing this? Great. Can you do this for me? Or I recommended you to so-and-so. And that's the advice that I was given too. You never know who you're meeting and what they're going to do for you. So don't burn any bridges. Don't be an asshole.
That was fab. I love his spreadsheets and tracking, and that's a really good takeaway from this, especially when it comes to being a creative entrepreneur. Joe's got multiple revenue streams and he manages himself like a business. So smart.
Very smart. Thank you, Joe. We're out of time, but we want to hear from you. We're loving all the emails. Please keep them coming. Shoot us a message and let us know who or what you want to hear on the podcast. Follow us on socials @cut.pod and keep those chats going. We love it.
Thank you so much for stuffing us in your ears. In our next episode, we chat to post supervisor Liam Mulligan, another Aussie living in LA.
We found another one.
Remember to subscribe, review, spread the word, all that good stuff wherever you get your podcasts.
Tell your mum.
See you next time.
See you next time. Cut is an Undertow content podcast. Your hosts are Amanda Browne and Nell Nakkan. Music composed by Genevieve Patrick, produced by Meg Hipwell and Ali Aitken.